now we get into the heart of it, because yes, you started off by saying content is king, and that's fine, and we want to create great content, but assuming we're doing that, what do you do next? And that's when you bring in, do you want to bring in video? Do you want to do something with SEO? Have you got any thoughts on that, Katie, at all?
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think content still is king, and I know it's a bit of a cliched saying, and we've been banding around for years, but I think it has the same resonance now that it has always done. I think what social media and digital comms really brings to the fold is it's how you can seed that out, that content out, how you can reach more people with that content, and it means that you don't necessarily abandon traditional avenues, but you've got this whole new toolkit that you can use to actually engage people and get stuff out there, and then it can spread as well. I think that's one of the key things, and I know viral's on there.
Seed, which wasn't on there.
but having people pass things on, and the ability to pass things on, and really it's only sort of the digital channel that's allowed that to happen, and so word of mouth has taken on a completely new meaning. In that sort of context.
How does the panel find, how organised can you be about this? Do you remember all of the different channels that are at your disposal and all the tools that are at your disposal? And the audience as well? I mean, as it just proliferates, I think it becomes quite hard to even remember what options are open to you and where you should begin and where you should end.
Depends how obsessive you are.
Yeah. If you're
depends how many decks you've got.
How do you do it? How do you manage it, Eva?
I'm quite butterfly-like, so at the moment I'm really into Instagram. And then things just fall by the wayside, because before Instagram there was Hipstamatic, and it's very cyclical, so that one thing kind of comes along and something else is bumped off. One thing I wanted to kind of...
How do you make... Sorry to interrupt a little bit, but how do you make the judgment about that?
It's just how much I enjoy it, because I love doing photography and writing on my stuff. And then, of course, it's in my interest to learn very, very quickly what it's useful for, is it going to be useful for this, that and the other. And it's really strange if you look at something like Clout, which I'm sure you all look at your Clout scores regularly, which is really dull.
Hands up who knows what Clout is. Hands up who's heard of Clout. Okay,
so
that's an indication. Not quite everyone, I think.
But for each of the networks...
So influence scoring for social media types.
The social media type. I will say, it's really interesting how, and this is quite interesting for people who are looking for influencers, is that on Foursquare I'm known for Italian restaurants and art galleries,
right.
But on another platform, for Twitter, it's cocktails and social media.
Disappointingly, the answer is it's not just one set of people that set the news agenda, and it's kind of both. It's both the traditional mainstream media, and to an extent, it's what's happening through social media. Certainly the way that I see it, because I think you've just got to accept that the political and media classes all dutifully listen to the Today programme, and they're doing so in increasing numbers. If you look at the viewing figures, you've also got to accept that if you combine the viewing figures for ITN's news at 10 and the 10 o'clock news on the BBC, it's something like 8 million people. Another 5 million people are watching the BBC News at 6. I've sat in news meetings in broadcast environments. I've sat in news meetings in print environments, and I can tell you that the national dailies have a huge impact in helping set the agenda. So does that mean that it's all sewn up and it's all the mainstream media? Well, no, it doesn't, because you have things that come along and challenge the consensus, which I think is quite healthy, and maybe that's a healthy way of saying that it's disruptive. If I can give another example from my experience, about a year ago, last April, we had a story that we had a feature we thought was absolutely fantastic in the New Statesman. And it involved the actor Hugh Grant going undercover to record a conversation with a guy called Paul McMullen, who is a ex-News of the World hack. And it was a story that had kind of everything. It had an A-list film star. It had David Cameron was mentioned in the piece, obviously with Rupert Murdoch, News of the World, News International, Rebecca Brooks, Jeremy Clarkson cropped up. I mean, it just kind of, if you had to tick some boxes and said, if you were doing the SEO and said, what are the things that make this successful? Clearly, we didn't do the SEO very well, but what we did quite well with social media. So we had this brilliant story, and it was turning the tables, and Hugh Grant, when he filed his copy, suggested a headline which we used, which was "The Bugger Bugged," which was rather nice and quite nicely self-deprecating and played to the stereotype. So we had this story. It was a Wednesday like this. We were going out. We were putting the press release together. We held it off the press release, and we gave it exclusively. We spoke to the editor of one of the nationals and said, "You can have this, so long as you credit it." Blah blah blah. They put it on I think page 8. They put it on a box, 120 words. We went, that's a bit weird. We think this is a really, really good story. So a week goes by. We put it online. It goes. What's that word I'm not allowed to use? It goes nuts. It goes bonkers. It goes absolutely nuts. I mean, it's had about getting on for about 1 million page views, which for us is absolutely enormous. And it went global and went that word that I'm not allowed to say. And at that point, the traditional media stood up and took notice, because they were seeing it coming into their Twitter feeds, they were seeing it on their Facebook pages, they were seeing people talking about it, and suddenly that validated the story. So I started off by saying, be careful when you say that social media and there's other ways of setting the agenda, but actually, it's kind of there's two things going on here.
And Eva, how do bloggers fit into this ecosystem?
Well, it's quite interesting because I've just been kind of like working my way through the technorati state of the blogosphere, and I wanted to put out some interesting facts. Is that bloggers, kind of in the survey, were talking about the fact that what they cover or what they read and what they consume is actually stuff about themselves. So if you want to kind of cut through to bloggers, you've actually got to deal with bloggers. And this is one of my big issues, is that I have 2 email addresses for my blog. I get the same pitches day in, day out. I get the intern coming to me all the time. And I find it kind of a little bit frustrating that I get press releases too. It's just never going to work. And the fact is, news in the blogosphere is, one of the trends this year, I think, which will go on and on, is this trend for social good, and people are campaigning for charities. So they used to go running, they used to go to China trekking or whatever, and now people are using their blog. So it's quite interesting to see how that's all sort of panning out. And I think Twitter is perfect for breaking news. I'd never break news on a blog, but I think what blogs are doing really, really well in the UK is exposing things like Guido Fawkes has done a fantastic job. Which I don't know if I should, you might have to cut that. But it's the secret bloggers, I think, who are really, like you're saying about behind the scenes. We love that kind of stuff, but at the moment we have got, a beleaguered media. There's no, let's look at the Sun. I mean, will it close this week?
Would you go as far as to say that bloggers do play quite a significant part in setting the agenda now?
I think they are possibly the thorn in the side of many a politician and many a leader. And I think moving on from that is that with the shrinking media, the pressure is now on brands who are now publishers to actually be quite responsible. And I think we're going to see that more and more, that the big global brands who have a wealth of content are going to have to really be quite careful about their CSR. So I think that's what we're going to see in the next couple of years.
We'll go straight over to global brands, CSR and other things as well.
Yeah, I think if you're not engaging with bloggers, I'd really urge you to do so. I think for Remington and Russell Hobbs especially, it's incredibly valuable. But one of the big red herrings with that is that I think people see digital and digital comms as a very quick win. And they neglect to realise that is a relationship that you need to build and you need to nurture in order to glean the best response from it. And I think that we are quite committed to educating our teams in all of our different European countries to deal with that quite responsibly and not blanket bomb 50 bloggers with the same sort of pitch email or the same press release that you're sending out to your journalists. They're doing it for most of bloggers that we work with are doing it for their passion, for their love of the subject that they're writing about. And I think you've really got to respect that as a brand and not see it as a quick win, and do treat it as a relationship that you need to nurture. I think that's a real pitfall that a lot of people have fallen into. But when you do yield the results, it is so worth it. Anyone that visits our websites, from a recommendation or a mention on a blog, they will spend twice as long on our site. They will browse twice as many pages. It's incredibly, incredibly valuable content. And the same goes for things like social media. In Finland, we had a fantastic opportunity where we had 2 of the main beauty bloggers in Finland guest blogging for us on our Facebook page. And the quality of traffic that generated was incredible for us. And so I think if you're not doing it, I really, really would urge you to challenge your PR agencies to make sure that blogger communications is in the mix, that they're aware of it, that they do it properly. We challenged our countries to do the same thing recently, and our German team came back to us and their PR agency had told them that there weren't bloggers in Germany, which was hysterical because, I mean, blogging really, Germany was one of blogging, especially the fashion industry's birthplace. I mean, that's the reason people like Borat rip off, or not Borat, sorry. That's the reason that you have those characters, Bruno. Exactly. And so I think that's when you have to look at your PR agency and say, are you the right PR agency for us as a brand?
There's one that my Mynewsdesk has to watch out for. It's called "Look at My Effing Red Trousers" as well. So we have to watch out.
That's a top fashion blogger.
Nice one, isn't it? Paul, so is this something that is increasingly part of the brief to Bottle PR to
Absolutely.
engage with bloggers?
And if it's not, we push back on the clients and say, look, you must be doing this. But I do think Bottle's probably not one of the few, but there are a lot of agencies that aren't doing it well, and it's, for me personally, a real frustration with the PR industry, and I don't want to knock the PR industry as a whole, but a lot of agencies...
Especially when they're all there.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of agencies aren't doing this properly. When it comes back to what you say, it's not just about let's do some blogger outreach, it's about doing it properly, and that's the frustrating thing, I think. And it comes back to what you said a bit earlier. It's about kind of developing those relationships, and that skill gap is where you often find instruction to someone, whoever it may be, to carry out a piece of work which might be blogger relations without really real understanding of why you're doing it even, let alone how to do it.
So is it a bit short-term sometimes as well? Is that maybe
relationships
take time?
Yeah, absolutely. It can be seen, I find it a lot with clients who perhaps, like you say, want a quick win. And to build a relationship with a blogger takes months, not days. But quite often there's a pressure, right, we want some blog coverage.
Do put your hands up in the audience if you've got any questions. We do want it to be quite interactive. Yes. Oh, we're just going to go here first. Adrian, sorry. Adrian, yes?
Hi, Adam. I'm a bit like Eva. I blog quite a lot, and I do get the same sort of pictures that you get, which makes the hell out of me. So, can the panel tell us, what would you say would be the right way to approach a blogger?
Yeah, well, I mean, from our point of view...
not wanting to give away the kind of the
I don't think there is a trade secret to it. It's fairly common sense. It comes back to this humanisation thing. If you want to talk to someone and get some coverage on a blog, then you've got to have a relationship with that person to understand what interests them. It's not about what I, as a brand or a PR agency, want them to write about. It's about what they want to write about. So I've got to be giving them the information that they're interested in, which has an emotional appeal to the person writing the story, the blogger. And that's where a lot of brands and agencies fall down. They just push the same old stuff, like you say. It lacks in relationship, in human stuff.
I just want to also make sure that we're not entirely focused on bloggers here as well. And the question about how brands should be approaching a blogger also applies to how brands should be approaching a journalist. Yep. And how do you think that might have changed, John?
All this very sensible, common sense stuff that Paul just mentioned still apply. The technology, the means of getting in touch with someone may change, but in terms of why you're getting in touch and how you're pitching what you've got to say or what you think is interesting. With your Hugh Grant example, you always made it sound like once the social media effect had started, that's when you got the result of the... Yeah. That's right. But I think once that had started, it wasn't going to stop. Sure. And I suspect there's other things there are doors that are more tricky to push on, and there'd be more resistance. And the key, from my point of view, is if someone is approaching you and they have never picked up your publication or logged onto your blog or read it or understood, oh, you do legal blogging. All right, that's all I need to know. I know something, there's something that's interesting. Well, no, it's not just you do. Actually, what you do evidence-based legal blogging. Okay, so what is it that I've got that's interesting to you? And it's all very common sense, but the number of people that do it completely backwards is incredible.